Hi, and welcome to Discover Meditation. I'm your host, Alex Schubert, and today we are going to be talking about happiness, or more particular, mindfulness as it relates to happiness, or happiness as it relates to mindfulness, however you want to look at it. But we're really going to be looking at how we can use these techniques, how we can use these teachings to be happier, to feel more happiness in our lives. But we're going to start this show the way we start every show, with a short breathing meditation. So we're going to start by getting in a comfortable position, and we'll start this meditation the way we normally start any meditation. The key is being in a position that we can maintain for the length of the meditation. And it allows us to take a full, deep breath. You're welcome to leave your eyes opened or closed. If you leave your eyes open, then find a spot in front of you to gaze at, allowing your eyes to slightly unfocus. And as we begin, taking a moment to adjust your position as needed, and starting with a nice deep breath. Holding it for a few seconds and slowly letting it out. Just allowing your breathing to normalize. There's no need to change your breathing. Just allowing it to happen. And bringing your attention to your breath. Finding a point where it's most noticeable. Might be where the breath enters your nose or mouth. Or as it enters your lungs, making them rise and fall. Or it might be most noticeable in your abdomen, and as it gently rises and falls. Just noticing what it feels like to breathe. A gentle rise and fall with each breath. In and out. Noticing the qualities of your breath. Is it cool or warm? Smooth or ragged? Just labeling. Not judging anything as good or bad, but instead just observing it as it is. Noticing your thoughts as they wander, and gently bringing them back. Bringing your attention back to the breath, back to this moment. Allowing yourself to be here now. Being patient with any difficulties you may be having. Always just noticing, being aware. Just seeing if you can be present, gently bringing your attention back to your breath. And there's nothing else you need to be doing in this moment other than being here. Breathing in and out. Now, with the sound of the bell, gently bringing our attention back to this moment. Okay. Again, a very short meditation, but just a nice way to start the show, bringing ourselves into this moment with awareness, with intention to be here and present, which is not always easy, especially with all the things we may have going on in our lives, maybe fighting for our attention, all the things that we might be thinking that we need to do now. It's important to just allow yourself this time. Allow yourself to be present with yourself. And like I said earlier, today we're going to be talking about happiness. And obviously this is a large part of many teachings of many different spiritual traditions, the route to happiness, the philosophy of happiness. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about is ancient, is old, is things that we've known for a long time. Big secrets that are not so secret. But in many ways, it's been very hard for us to follow through with the things that make us happier. In fact, in psychology, we're very guilty of focusing on all the things that are wrong and not focusing enough on things that are right. Fortunately, we've been working to remedy that. Branch of psychology known as positive psychology is looking to fix that. What do you do when you're done looking at what's wrong with a person? What do you do when you're done helping that person with their depression? They're no longer maybe feeling as depressed or anxious or whatever it is they might be experiencing. Psychology for a long time has just kind of said, okay, we're done. Let's move on, right? We fixed the problem. The insurance company certainly is focused on let's fix a problem and send the person on their way. And for many, feeling a little better, feeling less depression, feeling less anxiety is not an end in itself. There's the big now what. And of course, we've had a whole separate level, as I was saying, with religion and philosophy, where they've done a lot of work looking at the now what. What do we do after we're no longer dealing with just the things that are going wrong? In fact, many people at that point might look for more things to go wrong so that they can have something to focus on. Because if I'm not fixing problems, if I'm not solving things, what does that leave me? What do I do? So again, positive psychology has been looking at this, not as a problem, but as a next step apart. Maybe not even a next step, maybe a conjunctive step, something that's happening alongside it. So let's talk about this when it comes to mindfulness. How does mindfulness approach happiness? What does mindfulness teach us about happiness? Obviously, one of the first tenets of Buddhism, and we obviously talk a lot about Buddhism when we talk about mindfulness, is the idea that life is suffering. So if life is suffering, then where is happiness in that piece? Fortunately, if you go beyond the first piece of that, mindfulness is all about dealing with that. Right? We've got that first universal truth, but we have the now what next. So within modern research, and again, psychology is what I focus on, is what I deal with on a daily basis. We're looking at that now what. So there are many pieces that come into this. Right? Happiness is actually a lot of work. People sometimes forget that. They think that, all right, if I sit back and I wait long enough, happiness is going to come to me. That people who are happy in their lives are happy because all these good things just kept happening to them. That life worked out nicely for them. Right? There's a bit of a passivity in that. If I just sit back, then I'm going to be happy. Or those people were lucky enough to be happy. Of course, that's not true. Research is showing us that there's a small piece, don't get me wrong, right? I'm very much a fan of neurobiology, genetics, the idea that there are certain pieces that we are born with. You know, there is a predisposition, let's say, for happiness or sadness or other things. But that's only a fraction of it. Estimates are that that's only about 50% of it. That what we're born with is a piece, but it's not the whole story. Research is showing that what happens to us that makes us happy, the external stuff, is actually a very small piece as well. That's somewhere around only 10%. So the winning the lottery theory of happiness is actually only about 10%. They've got that whole show, I believe, I don't want to say the network, I don't know the name of the network, and the show in itself is kind of a horrid idea, but I believe it's called Lottery Losers. People who have won the lottery, got this instant rich, thinking they're going to be happy and are worse off than they were before. They're miserable. Money doesn't bring happiness. We know it. We've said it for years, right? This is old wisdom. Money doesn't buy happiness. Yet, of course, if you turn on the TV and watch the commercials, obviously buying that fancy new car or Coach purse, or I don't even know, I don't tend to watch commercials these days, but those things are going to bring us happiness. The more of those things we have, the happier we are. Again, it's just not true. You need a certain amount, don't get me wrong. If you are without a house or without shelter, in other words, without food, you're not going to be very happy, and it's very hard to find happiness within that. But once those needs are met, more money doesn't bring more happiness. Ask the rich. There's a reason why there are psychologists who make quite a lot of money treating the rich, because they are not happy, and they just have more money to pay for that unhappiness, or treatment for the unhappiness. So with all that in mind, where is the happiness? There's a lot of pieces. And what I like about bringing mindfulness into this is that mindfulness is in many ways training us to engage in that happiness. Simple things. One of the big pieces of happiness is interconnectedness, right? That connection with other people, that spending time with other people, friends, family, people we enjoy spending time with, people who are an important part of our lives, right? That actually brings a lot of happiness. That even just as simple as hanging out with somebody on a weeknight, right? You get home, you spend some time with somebody. That little bit enhances our lives. It enhances our happiness. Anybody who spent a period of time alone knows that, right? That idea that I am unhappy and the big ingredient is there's nobody here to share with. There's nobody here to be with. That interconnectedness is universal. I mean, look at social media, right? Begging for connectedness. more and more social media apps every day, different ways for us to connect with people of the world. We need that interconnectedness. And if we're mindful of it, it really enhances that interconnectedness. We've talked a lot about the idea of just being present, that if we can be present with someone, that is part of that enhancement. So I don't mean just hanging out with somebody and spending all the time on the phone. I know I see a lot of people, they're always flipping through and scrolling through their Facebook. Even in the movies these days, I don't know the point of going to the movie if you're gonna scroll through on Facebook, but this is what people do. So it's a disconnect that doesn't allow that connectedness. Just being physically present is not the same as being mentally present, right? We talk about that in mindfulness all the time. Being engaged, being in the moment, being with whoever you're with. Not an easy thing, because most of us always spend too much time with our devices. Myself, I'm guilty of it. I'm passing no judgment on anyone, but it's easy to fall into that trap. So that's a big piece, right? When we're looking at, if I have a pie chart of happiness, that interconnectedness is going to be a big wedge. That spending time with other people is a big wedge. Another big piece of happiness is something that positive psychologists call flow. This is one of my favorite things. The idea of being fully engaged in things that we enjoy. So, I want to take that back. I say enjoy. You don't even have to truly, this doesn't have to be a hobby. The neat thing about flow is it can happen in anything we truly engage in. So I like to use the example of the dishes, because I would say for most people, one of their least favorite chores is doing the dishes. People fight over doing the dishes. They stack up in sinks, and people go to sleep angry because the other person didn't do the dishes. And yet, if you truly do the dishes in a mindful way, the experience shifts. So an example of flow could be, let's say with dishes, fully mindfully doing the dishes, noticing every aspect of doing the dishes. Nowadays, with all these fancy soaps, you can have all sorts of different smells, right? Smells of the beach or flowers or fruits, whatever it is. Fully smelling it, the sound and feels of the warm water, the hot water, the smells of the soap, the sensation of cleaning a dish and watching it go from this greasy, grimy mess to clean, is a moment where we can fully engage in. But flow goes one step deeper. And generally, the way I look at flow is that moment where did the time go? Wow, it's been an hour already? I know sometimes when I paint, I get in that moment of flow where I'm just lost in it. I don't even realize the time. I sometimes have to set a timer to make sure that I don't go past a time that I have to be somewhere, because I get so lost in the flow of it. People might notice it playing video games, right? You get so lost in it. Though there's, different research on video games and how helpful they are. Does keep the mind active one way or the other. But being lost in something. Surfers talk about this all the time. And when I think of flow, I always think of surfers and people with water, probably because flow is kind of a liquid word. But they'll talk about that all the time, right? If you watch a documentary on a surfer, an interview with a surfer, they just talk about being lost in it. And the research shows that this flow is huge for us. That if we can engage in flow frequently, as frequently as possible, this actually makes us feel happier, makes us feel more engaged, makes us feel more fulfilled. This is a very cool thing, because, it's just asking you to do what it is you enjoy doing anyway, right? This isn't a weird, I have to go to a retreat in a Tibetan monastery for 6 months to feel some happiness. This is, I just need to engage in what I like, mindfully engage in what I like. So that means when I'm painting, I'm not thinking about bills. not thinking about student loans, which make me feel nothing but unhappiness. I'm thinking about painting. I'm thinking about the color, the texture, the brush strokes. All of this is part of the flow, and I'm fully lost in it, and depending on the activity. So this wouldn't be crocheting where we, don't even realize what we're crocheting at that point. For those who, I think I was making knitting movements, not crocheting movements, but for those of you who do crocheting and knitting, I'm sure you could do better movements on that. But the idea of we're not doing it and forgetting what we're doing it and forgetting everything else. And this concept of flow, very important and very much a mindful activity. Another big piece, and this will be the last piece I will be talking about today, is the idea of growth. Okay, so growth happens in all sorts of different ways. Again, very much a psychological thing. One of the things that can happen that's being talked about a little more, there's a very well-known psychological disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Of course, this has come more into the forefront of discussion due to the large amount of troops, soldiers who are coming home with PTSD, who are struggling with it, who are dying from it in many ways. This epidemic we're having of PTSD symptoms. Now, this is of course not exclusive to the military. We're just seeing more of it because we have more people who are experiencing these traumatic events and then coming back with the symptoms of it. So again, in the traditional psychological way, PTSD is the problem, right? And we solve the problem through various techniques, trauma-based therapies, and there is fairly effective treatments for it. It's not a perfect cure, but with the right treatment, people can recover from PTSD. But I think kind of the misnomer of that is as if the PTSD was a snapshot of time, the recovery is a snapshot of time, and then that's it. What it's ignoring is that there is growth there. And what is now being looked at is called post-traumatic growth. The idea, again, a very old one, right? What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. I believe it was Nietzsche who said this. Boy, that must have been, 80, 90 years ago or so. I forget the exact dates of Nietzsche, but the idea that we grow from adversity. We grow from horrible events. We can actually be happier after we have gone through these things. That as horrible as these things were, the person who comes out on the other side is actually stronger, has actually gained something from this growth. So what does that have to do with mindfulness, you might be asking yourself? The idea being that mindfulness is all about perspective, right? It's about looking at things. It's about looking at ourselves, at the world, at the universe, without a filtered lens. So, you've got the idea of rose-colored glasses where everything looks beautiful and wonderful. You've got the other set of lenses where everything is horrible and decayed. And that, of course, reality is somewhere in between. Everything is not always beautiful and wonderful, and everything is not always corrupt and decayed. Growth is where we get there in the middle. That we can be mindful of ourselves, of our experiences, of our lives, and gain perspective on that. And this can frequently happen, even for people without, though I wouldn't say I'm thinking of something like a heart attack, or not that I'm saying that's not a traumatic event, but that idea where the person comes out of these horrible things and for a short period of time really starts to appreciate things, and then that kind of falls away. The mindfulness is the ability to hold on to that, to look at all that we have and spend time with it, appreciate it, be with it, be in the moment, and not worried about where we might be going or where we may have come from, that we're growing within the moment. Again, that is probably the shortest time I could possibly talk about such a complex subject. But again, relating this to this idea of happiness, that happiness, again, is not just a whole bunch of wonderful things that just keep happening to us and how wonderful everything is and how happy we should be. It's more about, okay, where do I find this lotus in the pond, right? The symbol of a lotus flower in a murky swamp, that these lotuses grow in these dark places. Okay, so unfortunately, we're already at the end of this show. So I do want to end with a short meditation. And I was thinking we would do a little bit of a gratitude, compassion meditation, a short version of a metta meditation to end our show. So again, getting comfortable, starting with a nice deep breath. Slowly letting it out. And just starting by checking in with yourself, noticing where you may be at in this moment, where your thoughts may be. And just bringing yourself into this moment. And just start by thinking something good that you've done for yourself or for others. It can be something simple, like saying a kind word to someone, sending them a card when they're ill, making them dinner when they're tired. Whatever it is that you may have done, or even something kind that was done for you, a thoughtful gesture. Just bringing yourself to that moment fully. Experiencing the emotions that come along with that. The warmth that we may feel while thinking of these events, of this happy moment. And just saying to ourselves, may I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be free from suffering. Just truly wishing ourselves happiness. Even if we may find it difficult. Again, saying to ourselves, may I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be free from suffering. And bringing yourself back to this moment. And I want to thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon.